Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another live stream. Just getting a couple things ready here. I every single time I've been doing these almost the entire summer, and every single time there's always a little something here, a little something there that is just not quite right. You would think I'd become an expert by now, but no. There's always a little thing that I gotta go do, that I gotta go fix. But anyways, we are here. We are live. We are getting ready to do some Jira automations, so I'm very excited to bring this one on. And I'm really, I think if you've never done a Jira automation rule, be ready to have your mind blown away because this is one of the coolest features ever. I really love this feature. This is has to be again one of my favorite things to do. It's one of the hardest things that I have to do as well. As a Jira admin, I'm not gonna lie. This one's a doozy. This one probably, if you're kind of like from a Jira administrator perspective, if you're kind of like not really sure where your skill sets lie, well, this is for the advanced folks. And so it's a lot of fun though. I think you're gonna really enjoy it. I have a lot planned here for this episode today, and I think you're really gonna walk away kind of having a deeper appreciation for what automation rules are, for for basically how to use these automation rules to make your life easier. I'm hoping to inspire some ideas. We're gonna be looking at some documentation, and we're gonna be doing some examples, and so hopefully you really like it. I'm really confident that this I got something for everybody here on this episode here, and if you've never used them, you're gonna love it. If you are a pro, let me know in the comment section. I'd love to hear and see from everybody, and see where all your guys' expertise is at, level of comfort. And one last thing here, I am going to man, I was trying to turn on my air conditioner. That's not working. So it's gonna be a little toasty today. So we'll see how that goes. My Wi-Fi just got messed up literally minutes before we started. So, anyways, one thing here that I want to do then before we get started though, I do want to share my link here with a couple of other people. So I haven't had a chance to invite everybody over. So let me share the link with just a couple more people here, just to see if we can get some traffic. And if you're watching the live stream and you haven't shared this with your friends and family and everybody else that you know, tell them there's still plenty of time. We're gonna get started here in another minute or so. I'm just gonna drop a link to a couple of channels that I'm a part of. Try to get a few more people in the chat, get some conversations going, and try to help out as many people as possible. So if you're just tuning in here, we are doing Jira automation rules. This is a really cool thing to learn. Even if you're not a Jira admin, there's a lot you can do here from a Jira user perspective. And so I really think you're gonna really appreciate this. And so looking forward to it here. Let's let's do a let's have a fun session here. So just give me a second while I drop a link here on Jira automation. And so while I'm doing this, feel free to drop your name in the chat here. Say hello. I'm gonna be doing some shout outs here in a second. I'm just trying to find a couple of channels again to just kind of ping people and trying to get some folks to join the chat here. So it's always more fun when we have a couple more people. So I'm just trying to get as many people as possible in here, and let's have some fun with it. I'm trying to get some other former students that I've had, and some other I've posted everywhere. So anyways, let's jump into it and let's start covering this stuff. So Jira automation rules, if you don't know what they are basically a simplified way of making things easier in Jira. And so think of it like, I would say it's the closest thing to coding in Jira. There's definitely there's an opportunity for you to write some code, although this isn't like Google level code where you got to really know how to create like all these advanced functions. But you do need to be comfortable with logic, and you kind of need to know what you want. But Jira has a playground, so it has like a library that you can get like a teaser for what you can do. But ultimately, I'm at the point where I have yet to see a use case where I can't do something with the tool. It's just so powerful, so interesting, and just the capabilities that are built into this thing are just incredible, and I'm excited to share it with you. And so we're gonna start at the beginning. I'm gonna show you the library. We're gonna look at that. gonna kind of walk you through an example, give you a breakdown of what this stuff is, and then we're gonna jump into Jira, and then we're gonna do some examples as well. So if you're, I see people are starting to join the live here, so feel free to drop a comment, drop a thumbs up, just say hello, where are you from, what's your name, who you are. I'd love to say hi, give you a quick shout out. So I am monitoring that. So as we jump into the library here, feel free to drop a quick comment or just at least a thumbs up. It helps out the channel tremendously. And let's go into it. All right. So first place we're visiting is the Jira Automation Template Library. And so to be able to get to this, it's really, really simple. All you got to do is Google literally Jira Automation like Playground. That's the one that I've been using in the past. But you can use the type in template library or playground. Whatever you type in, the results are going to get you pretty much the same thing here. And so this is kind of like the one area where if you're completely new, this is where you're going to want to come. This is where you essentially learn. There's samples from professionals here that you'll be able to get some inspiration. I'm going to go over a couple just to kind of get your feet wet, and then we're going to go into Jira and we're going to try a couple of these for realsies. So anyways, so what is an automation, right? So automate any task or process in just a few clicks. It really is that simple. It's available to all Jira Cloud customers, and so you just pick from templates, you save a ton of time, and you stay focused, and you connect it with your tools, right? And I could personally attest to this, right? So one of the reasons why you would use an automation rule is so that you take a manual process that could be time consuming, which oftentimes it is very time consuming, and you take these manual processes and you essentially automate them, and you make them so that the tool worries about it for you on your behalf, and you don't have to worry about getting things like getting your hands dirty, right? Like this is super easy for you to go and use, and then it kind of, you just set it and you forget it. Once the automation rule is in effect, it goes and does the stuff for you. And again, I'm going to give you examples of all this stuff in a little bit, so just keep following along. All right, and so this right here, what you see here is essentially the basics. It's 3 parts to an automation rule. So you have the when, which is a trigger, right? And so we need to be essentially, Jira's always listening. And so you need to define, okay, so Jira's always kind of listening to every interaction that's happening. And by the way, every interaction by every user is recorded in a log. One of the new features for premium and maybe enterprise, for sure enterprise, maybe premium Jira users, right? But since Jira is always listening, it can be triggered. It can be listening for specific activities, and you can define these as a trigger here. And so when some event happens, then we will do something else, right? But you can add some logic. You don't just have to do like the when, but you can do like if certain conditions are met, which is kind of important because your very first rules, maybe you can get away with like, here's a trigger. If this trigger happens, then I want to do this. But as you get more advanced, you kind of start adding more criteria, more conditions, and so that way your rules just not always firing, because you can actually kind of, I don't want to say get in trouble, but you can have like some very ineffective rules if you just like create a bunch of stuff that's just always triggering, right? And so your Jira systems is always going to be firing away. You don't kind of want to do that, right? There's ways for you to kind of stay safe and not overburden the system. And so I want to take a time here. Foxy Steffi, thank you so much for the wave. Appreciate you stopping by. And if everybody else, if you're new, if you're just tuning in, we're talking about Jira automation rules. One of my favorite things to do in Jira. We're going to be giving you a beginner's guide today, kind of a teaser. Feel free to drop a comment or a hello in the chat. Would appreciate that. And then stay tuned for the whole thing because we're going to be learning some really cool things. I really love automation rules, and I'm excited to share them with you. All right, so coming back here, so we got some conditions. The then is basically the activity. This is the action that we're automating. And so you can get very crazy and very creative here. And then you can kind of, these rules are really interesting, right? And so I've been teasing it for a couple minutes. I think it's time to maybe scroll down and keep learning a little bit more about it, right? And so as we scroll down, you don't need to worry about this popular category section. We're just gonna skip this, and we're gonna keep going down. There's some popular templates. You can take a look at those, but the real stuff, the stuff that I want you to look at, is all the way down to where we get to this automation playground. Now, this automation playground is fantastic, especially if you're new. If you haven't really done this before, this is a safe sandbox environment where you can interact and explore hundreds of automation templates and see exactly how they work. And if you're not a Jira Premium user, this might be a very good thing for you, because in Jira Premium, you have the option of creating a sandbox. But if you don't have a sandbox and you want to essentially create rules and kind of play with them, this playground here that we're presenting here, this is a great place for you to come and interact and kind of learn how to use automation rules. But if you do have a sandbox, I recommend that you learn here, go to your sandbox, try them there, and then bring them to your production environment. Because even though you won't break anything in Jira, at least I haven't seen any like breakage, and I've been using rules for, I don't know, maybe 2 years now. The rules are challenging. They're at the very beginning. If you weren't tuned in, right, the rules from a Jira administrator, from a Jira user perspective, like automation rules are kind of like they're definitely a more advanced feature, right? Out of everything that is available to you in Jira, automation rules is definitely going to be one of those things where you're a little bit more pro, right? And so I want you to be very. I don't want you to come in with this false expectation that you're like, oh, I'm gonna set up all these rules and stuff. Like, yeah, you can do that, but at the same time, you want to be very mindful of that. That this is going to be, a tool, a skill set that you learn that is probably going to be a little bit more challenging. Okay, but not to worry, not to fret. You got a professional here guiding you, and so we're gonna have some fun with it. Anyways, now that we're down to the automation playground, we're essentially gonna be looking at a couple of these examples. So we have, they say hundreds. I don't know if they actually have hundreds. Let's see how many they actually have. Yeah, I wouldn't say they have hundreds, but they definitely have a good amount of rules. Yeah, they don't have that many, but they have a healthy amount for you to kind of learn and start learning about these. So let's take a look at these, and I'm kind of going to show you kind of like, we're going to start with the most popular. I think this is a great area to start, and we're just going to go take a look at what are other people doing with these automation rules. And so we're going to look at this, right? So this is a kind of a cool one, although this one's kind of built in already, but let's take a look at this, right? And so the rule here, and let me kind of walk you through this interface too, right? And so what we have here is a rule, and you'll have the detail section. The detail section essentially walks you through the rules and conditions, right? The terms of agreement of what this rule is all about. So every single rule has to have a name, and so this one's gonna auto close the parent issue when all subtasks are done. And you might be thinking to yourself, wow, this is a great rule to have, right? Like when all the subtasks are done, if you forget, you might have to go into Jira and update the status of that parent. But wouldn't it be nice if Jira did it for you, right? So this is the kind of stuff. That's where like this automation rules gets me super excited, because this applies to a bunch of different things, right? So how many of you, show of hands, anybody in the chat here, we got a couple people in the chat, how many of you have been using Jira? You got an epic that's, it's got its own status, right? But then you have stories under that epic. All those stories go to done, but that epic's doing to do. Anybody in the chat want to maybe drop a thumbs up if you've seen that kind of experience? Now, wouldn't it be nice, wouldn't it be cool if Jira just knew that once one of the stories went into in progress, hey, one of my children went into in progress, I must be in progress as the epic. Let me move myself to in progress, right? And so if you've ever gone like, man, I wish Jira can do that, clearly you've never seen an automation rule, because that's what the automation rules do. That is the exact one of the use cases of why this thing is so powerful, because rather than like thinking of a world of what ifs, you can actually come in here and do the automation rule, and so that as soon as a story goes into in progress, the epic will automatically move itself into in progress. And when a story or all the stories go to done, right, then you can tell Jira, or Jira can tell you, hey epic, all my children are done, so clearly I'm done, right? And so those are some of like the very simple, you wouldn't think much about it, but it's like these little time savers. It's these like little cool little things that you could do within the tool that essentially allow us to, instead of having to waste time going into every epic and go, oh look, I got a children in progress, I'm gonna go update you, right? Instead of doing all that, you just have Jira do it for you. So Mara, Gary, sounds like you've been through this scenario before, And so I don't know if you've ever experienced this. It sounds like you might have, but if you have, and if you've been struggling with it and you don't have an automation rule, tonight we're going to be looking at some of those things, right? And so that's kind of just at the very basics. Like, this is just a teaser, right? Like, this is what you can do with those automation rules. So anyways, you have to put a name. That's a non-negotiable. The description, I don't always put a description in my rules, but it's always good to have a description just so you can kind of know what it is. I try to be as descriptive as possible in my title, and so I don't typically use the description, but this is kind of important. Now, scope. This is very, very important. Your scope is, you have a couple of options. You get to choose whether this is going to run on a single project, all the projects, multiple projects, or specific project type. Now, depending on your subscription, depending on whether you're on the free version of Jira, on the standard version of Jira, or the premium version of Jira, this selection here is going to be very, very critical. So Gary's got perfect topic. I literally just wrote the automation rule to do just this the other week. Yeah, automation rules, man. Once you discover them, they just become this like addiction, right? Where you're like, what else can I automate? So Gary, thanks for sharing that. I really do. I believe in the power of automation rules, and they're just, if you've never used them before, guys and gals, it's life changing, right? So I'm hoping that I give you enough of the foundation that you need to go and explore these in your Jira projects, because I have yet to find a person that's like, you know what, automation rules, not for me, right? Everybody that I've ever talked to, that once they discover automation rules, they're like, holy moly, this is some game changing stuff here, right? And so, anyways, going back to the scope thing here, this again, depending on the version, right, you're limited to how many rules, how many automation rules can run, right? Especially with multi-project. So you want to be very selective. You want to make sure that you're picking the right option here so that you don't run up against limits. With that said, when you're on the premium, right, maybe you're kind of on the fence of whether do you want to go to Jira Premium or not. Here's yet another reason why you do want to be on Premium, because being able to run this automation rule across all the projects can be a gift. It could also be a curse, but it can be a gift. And so you can think about, well, why would I ever want to run a rule across all my projects, right? Well, going back to that Epic example, which of your Jira projects is not using Epics? I'm willing to bet almost every single project you have, or that's in your system, is going to be using Epics and Children, right? So rather than creating a rule for every single project, you could just do one rule that applies to all of them. Now, excuse me, because I do kind of sneeze. Oh my god. Okay, sorry, had a sneeze. Maro's got I need to write something that creates a subtask after the main Jira has been in a certain status for certain days. Let's take a look at that. We can definitely take a look, Mara, during the example. So that is a very good one. Just by reading that, I think it should be possible. I don't see any reason to not be able to do this, and so we'll play around with it. But kind of let me finish telling people how these automation rules work. All right. So now that we know the scope, right? I will, as a best practice, usually do a single project, but feel free to do multiple projects if you really are on a couple different projects, or if it's really a global rule, right? Maybe you're trying to add up story points or something that is going to apply to pretty much everybody, and you have the right version of Jira here, then feel free to do all projects, which is going to make it a global thing. So anyways, I'll just do single just for, or I'm just going to leave it at all so that it does this. Now this allow rule trigger, this is really key. This is really, really important. It took me a long time to figure this one out. So here you are. This is why you join this live, the stream here, right? Because this is where you hear it first. This is where you learn from my mistakes, and hopefully you don't have to make the mistakes, right? This allow rule trigger, what it does is you can actually daisy chain your rules. So you can make a rule that executes X, right? Then, based on the output of that rule, we can then trigger another rule that will do Y. And so these rules are interconnected. But unless you check this checkbox, unless this checkbox is selected, the daisy chaining will be broken. It won't be connected. So this checkbox will connect the daisy chain, and rule A will trigger when it's done, and its output changes another field. For example, right? I'm getting way too excited. I'm all over the place with this, right? But let's say you have a rule that you're gonna every time you're monitoring for the status, right? When the status changes of a particular issue, right? We're gonna go and populate like the assignee field, right? And we're gonna automatically we want all of our tickets whenever all of our Jira issues whenever they're transitioned to in progress, we're automatically gonna assign them to a specific developer. Okay, silly example, but just bear with me, right? So that's one rule. But now I can be saying, hey, I have another rule so that when assignee is set, I want you to populate like a comment and or send an email out or something, right? And so those are two separate rules. But if you don't select this checkbox, when that assignee is updated by that first rule, that second rule won't trigger. It won't actually execute. So it's really, really critical that you come back in and check this checkbox here so that when the first rule, which is let's assign the user upon that transition, and then we have a second rule that says, hey, when the assignee field is updated, I want you to do something else. It basically allows that daisy chaining to happen. So it's really, really critical. It took me forever, like I said, to figure this one out. But once you know that you can daisy chain these, it's also like life changing here because then you're like infinitely like powerful in Jira because now all of a sudden all of your different rules can kind of just like piggyback off of each other and you can do these chain reactions of just like all this automation just happening behind the scenes and it's just again it's just it lets you use Jira on a whole different level that you didn't even know you could do, right? And the secret sauce right there is that allow rule trigger. So make sure if you're going to be stacking your rules, that you're checking this checkbox. Otherwise, you're going to be very disappointed. You're going to be very, very disappointed. I don't understand why it's an option. Why wouldn't Atlassian make the default way out of? You know what? This is a this is a great Atlassian question, right? Like, why wouldn't it work like this? I've never seen a use case where I would say, you know what, I don't want these to be daisy chained. So it doesn't make sense why Atlassian would do that, right? Whoa, this text, I gotta change it. I don't like that red text. But yeah, no, Gary, I'm with you. I have no idea. Like this to me should be like automatically defaulted to this, right? Because I don't see myself at any point. Because what if I forget, right? What if like I wrote a rule like a month ago, and then all of a sudden I write a new rule, and they should be daisy chained, but I just didn't. I don't remember, or some other developer or some other admin created the rule. It just doesn't make sense, right? And so yeah, I definitely agree. I'd be curious to maybe tag Atlassian on Twitter and see what's up. Although I'm willing to bet that if you were to Google like why isn't allow rule triggered like defaulted by or enabled by default, I'm willing to bet that there's a like a ticket already that's quote unquote gathering interest from Atlassian, right? Because Atlassian loves to do these gathering interest requests where they end up just going into a black hole. Has anybody ever had, as a total sidebar, has anybody ever had success where they recommended like a change to Atlassian and it actually got implemented? Because most of mine just go into this gathering interest abyss and they just never make it out of there. So anyways, that's what that one's up for. Now, the next one we're going to do notify on error. So this is a useful one, right? You basically want to know, hey, my Jira rule, it's supposed to do something, but it's not doing it. And so you're going to email the owner of this rule when the rule starts failing, right? So maybe sometimes it's working, sometimes it fails. And I like this. I like to have this option enabled because you can actually change things, right? You can say like rule every time it fails or don't notify at all, right? And so I like to leave the default, which is only after it fails, after I've had success. Because otherwise you're just going to be bombarded with emails all the time, right? And so I like to have it though because my rules, I do my testing and I like to go back and say, oh, wait, this was working and now it's not working, so let's go troubleshoot. And maybe most of the time my end users are using Jira differently than the way I designed the automation rule. So this is a great way to go look at that. Owner's kind of not too important. This one basically tells you who created the rule. That's not as important. What is important, and I can't see it here, is I can't see it, but it's just you can't see it easily. I'll show you when we go into my Jira. But the actor is critical. You want to make sure that you pick the right actor. And there's two options for the actor. One, you can leave the default, which is going to be like automation for Jira, right? And probably an open ticket since 2008. Yes. Okay. So automation for Jira is the default actor. The problem is if you've modified your permission scheme in Jira, and so I'm just gonna quickly jump into Jira, right? But if you go into any of your permission schemes and you've modified them, you may have noticed during your permission schemes that you have this very interesting option always added in here, Atlassian add-ons project access. So if you kick that out, more than likely 99% chance this rule is not going to execute in your project. You're going to get some sort of an error, right? And so you want to make sure that that this is always in your like permission settings. Otherwise, those rules aren't going to work. Now there is a workaround. Like if you don't, you're like, you know what, Alex, I've already kind of messed up, and I don't want to. I don't want to go back and modify my permission schemes. Not no big deal. All you got to do is change the actor to be somebody that does have power in your Jira project, right? So I would set it for some admin or somebody like that, right? So make sure that you assign it to a person, or you can change the actor to be a person in that project that actually can do things. And more specifically, if you're going to be creating an issue, then you want the actor to be somebody that can create issues, that has that permission. If you're going to be editing an issue, well, guess what? You're going to want to define an actor that can edit issues in that project. So again, the default's going to be automation for Jira, but you can change it. Now, one little caveat when you do that, this tends to trip people up. If you change the actor to like your name, when you go into the issue itself, there's a history, right? Jira's always tracking everything you're doing in Jira. And so in that history, the action, whatever the rule did, it's going to have your name said that you did it. And so depending on the culture of your company, depending on the trust and the way your guys run your ship here, you might get some funny looks, right? When they're gonna go, well, look, you edited. Jira doesn't lie. Your name's here. But sometimes I have to remind people, like, yeah, but that's an automation rule that's just running on my name, just so that we can get past the permission problem, right? So you just want to be mindful that does cause some frictions in some organizations where they'll be like, well, look, your name is on it and you changed it and you clearly broke it. So just be careful with that. But for the most part, you should be fine. And then the final thing of this section of this setting here is who can edit this rule. And so this is going to be like, is it private? So like only you, only specific admins, or all the admins. I usually leave all the admins just so that if I'm never not there anymore, or if another admin wants to come and change something, they can do it. But again, too many cooks in the kitchen applies here, right? So you better trust who is able to do that. So hopefully that made sense. That's just the rule details, just breaking you down all the different things you can do here. You do want to be careful though, right? Because when you create the rule, you don't come to the rule details. I'll show you when we go to the example in Jira. But when you go to create a brand new rule, you kind of bypass this option, right? You're going to go straight into like making the logic of the rule. And so you have to remember, once you hit publish, that you got to come back and do this. Because if you don't, then you're going to get the defaults and it might just not work for you. Okay, so let's see. We're going to skip the audit log. Whoa, I was not expecting that. Uh-oh, I lost all the rules. We are going to be looking at the audit log, but when we go to the actual Jira project itself, we're going to... I lost the rules. Oh boy. What happened to the rules? I might just have to jump into my own Jira. Let's start all over? That's strange. What happened to the rules? Oh, here we go. Okay, so we're just going to go to more popular auto-sign issues of contrast. Okay, we'll just pick a different one. Anyways, we'll come back to the auto log. I'll show you once we're in my project how that works. Now, here's why we're here. Okay, so here's how this works. Okay, first thing, you want your trigger. And this is going to make more sense when we make a whole new one. But the very first thing that you get to define is when is your trigger. When I go do the example in my Jira project, I will show you all the different options that you have. But this particular one, just for this example, this is auto-assign Jira issues upon transition, okay? And so this rule is basically saying, hey, whenever a transition occurs in Jira, I want you to execute. I don't care what. I don't care when. if there's a transition in Jira, if a transition has indeed occurred, I need you to do something. And I'm going to tell you what it is in a couple steps, right? And so you can actually define like conditions. You can define, is it from, is it to, right? You can have lots of options here for you to get really, really specific with, that way it only runs under a specific transition. But if you just leave it blank, this is basically going to say anytime that any issue is transitioned, we are going to run, we're going to execute, which again could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. It just really depends on your permission, on your subscription type, and how many times you want this stuff to actually be running. Right? So just, your mileage varies, but just be careful here. So anyways, that's your when, right? Next up is your condition. So you don't want this stuff to be running for everybody and everything, right? And you can, it's possible, but you want to be mindful. You want to make sure that you kind of limit and make sure that these rules are only running when they actually need to run, when it makes the most sense. Otherwise, they're just going to be firing off all the time, which could really, I've never seen a performance degradation. It'd be interesting to see if Atlassian has any documentation on that. But I've never witnessed any performance degradation, and I have hundreds of rules running all the time. But it's good etiquette, right? You don't want to be a slob and just let things kind of go crazy, right? And so it's good etiquette to make sure that you're putting conditions. So in the chat, let me know if do you use conditions, or do you just kind of do your transitions? I'm kind of curious to see and hear from you. So if you're in the chat and you're still paying attention, let me know. Also, I've seen people come in and out of this thing. So we are talking about Jira automation rules. And so if you're new, make sure you're following along. Drop a hello in the chat if you just joined. Drop a thumbs up. Helps out with the algorithm and all that good stuff, right? And so right now we're asking the chat, do you use conditions, right? Do you kind of try to be a little bit more efficient or in your creation of rules? And do you kind of try to make sure that your rule only runs under certain conditions? Or do you just go wild, wild west and you're like, you know what, just do it. Just go and run, right? So I'm kind of curious. So let me know in the chat. Also, if you've never run an automation rule, I'd love to know. How many automation rules have you created? Let me know in the chat. How many automation rules have you created one? Let me know. I'm curious. If you never created one, let me know as well. So let's get some conversation going in the chat. I'd love to get some feedback from you all and see where your guys' skill sets are at. So it sounds like Mary and Gary, you two have probably used the automation rules in the past, but for everybody else in the chat here, what's your experience with this? All right, so we'll talk about these conditions. There's a ton of conditions you can do, but we'll talk about them when I go back into my Jira, which we're going to do here very shortly. And then the last thing is the action, is the actual activity. And so we are going to assign an issue in this case, right? And so I'm actually going to basically show you a couple more in this sandbox, and then we're going to Jira, and we're going to go create some. Sounds good? Hopefully it sounds good. All right. So anyways, that was that one. Let's see. What's another cool one? So here's one that's very close to what Mara's trying to do, right? Automatically add 3 subtasks, right? Probably not the exact same thing that Mara's trying to do, but we're going to create a subtask. We're going to create a subtask here. And so you're going to need logic from here, right? You're going to need the create part on how to create them. So there's a technique there, right? And it's going to tell you where to create them and stuff like that. So there's stuff that we can borrow from here, but you can see that this one doesn't have a condition. This one just has, hey, when an issue is created, I need you to create 4 subtasks, and I want them to have these names, and then I need you to create them in this particular project with this information, right? So that's just another example there. Let's go back and see what else we got. So close the parent. No, we've already done. Clear we go. Close stories when the epic is marked done. So at the beginning, we were talking about an automation rule where if the children are marked done, close the epic, right? But what if we went the other way? What if we got the epic done, right? And so that one's completed. Well, now we want the stories underneath and to automatically just go straight to done, right? Because if the epic is done, then it is safe to assume that all the children have become a moot point at this point, right? And so how do we do that? Let's go look, right? So we got when the issues transition to done. See how, if you remember from earlier, we didn't really have this defined. This was kind of open. But in this particular example, we're explicitly calling out that when we move to the status of done, now we want something to happen, right? So this is not going to fire up all the time, this is going to be very, very prescriptive, and it's only going to execute when the status goes from anything to done, right? And then we're going to refine this. Now we're going to look, if the issue type equals an epic, I only want you to run, right? Because you could transition a story to done, you can transition a bug, you can transition a subtask, right? You can transition anything, but we're specifically on listening. Okay, so we're going to done, that's one condition, but the next condition is, was the issue that just went to done, was that an epic? Because if it is, now we want to listen a little bit more, right? But if it's not, we want to ignore it, because we don't want this to run every time. We just want it to run only when it's an epic, right? And so we got that going. Now this right here, this is advanced. This is some more. This is called a branch rule, and this is kind of where, once you kind of master these concepts of like the branch rules, things get very interesting for you, right? You can get some advanced things going on here, and so this basically is going to tell you, okay, so I'm in an epic. I've identified that I am an epic because my issue type equals epic, right? Now, this is basically becomes like a for loop. If you've ever coded before in your life, you might be familiar with the concept of a for loop, right? And so what this is going to do is basically going to go out and say, okay, I hear you. I'm an epic. Now let me go look at my children, right? And so my children are going to be stories. This is a very loose thing, right? It doesn't have to be a story. It can be a task or a bug. Pretty much anything that can actually be a child of an epic, right? And so you're basically going to go and look at this for every story, right? And now you're going to iterate. You're going to iterate through each one. But you don't want to just iterate through each one blindly. You want to go and look for the ones that aren't already done. You want to be very prescriptive here as well, right? And so we're going to say basically what this rule is saying here is, okay, we've transitioned to done. We've confirmed we're an epic. Now that we know we're an epic, we're going to go look at all of our children. Any of our children whose status does not equal done, then we're going to do something. Then we're going to transition it to done as well, but we're going to copy from the trigger. You don't have to do this. You can just change it to done as well, right? But you do want to be careful with this, because sometimes your workflow for your stories might not be the same workflow for your epic. So if you do what this rule says, is copy from the trigger issue, it's going to try to move it to done. Maybe your stories are set to be like closed, and so you're going to run into some problems here. So be careful when you're doing these copy from triggers and stuff like that, because sometimes they'll bite you in the butt, sometimes they're going to be your best friend. And also you want to set your resolution, because if you're not setting your resolution, you might run into some problems there too. So anyways, that's that rule. And I think this is a good stopping point. I think we saw enough of these examples here. I don't know if anybody wants to see one more, but there's different types, right? So you got the most popular. We got notifications. So these notifications are going to like do some sort of an email that gets sent out, or a Slack message that gets sent out. Weekly emails, right? So there's just a bunch of different notification styles that you can do. We got DevOps. If you are using your source code management, right? If you get your Bitbucket or your Slack or your Jira, your GitHub integrated, these are going to be cool. These are really, really interesting, right? These are really good, because like these rules here will be like when your pull request is merged, right? And you're in this particular Jira status, then I need you to transition to done, right? And so this again kind of helps you out, because I don't know about you, I keep saying this, maybe because I'm a former developer, but developers are lazy, right? And so this is, you can imagine that you can do these rules where when the issue moves to in progress, when a developer creates their branch against that Jira ticket, we can automatically move the issue to in progress. When the developer creates the PR, we can automatically move it to that in review status. And now this rule that I just showed you was, well, when that PR gets merged and everything, all your T's got crossed and your I's got dotted, let's move it to done, right? And so you can create these, like, make it super simple so that your developers don't have to even come into Jira, right? So just based on what's happening with the activity that they're doing in the day-to-day as a developer, we can have Jira do all kinds of cool things without, again, bogging down and being like a micromanager of like, hey, your Jira's not updated, right? So if you've ever had those problems, check these rules out because again, there's just so many different things here. Syncing issues. This is a very common thing, right? This is something that I'm doing where sometimes, let's see if I can find a good one, right? Um, uh, Here we go. When the due date changes, right? This is a pretty good one, right? So we're listening for a due date to change. If it changes, and it changes, if there is an epic, right? If an epic does exist, that means that there's a related issue that it knows that it has an epic. Then for that epic, we're gonna like bump ourselves up. For that epic, we're gonna go and update the due date on that epic as well, and we're gonna copy it from whatever trigger, whatever that value was in that trigger issue. So okay. Some advanced things. Some you can get very very creative here. If you're feeling overwhelmed, it's okay. It's understandable. This is just like it's just so powerful, and this really can be like an 8 hour thing, right? Where we can just, and I'm actually planning eventually down the road making like a formal like 8 hour course on just automation rules, but I just wanted to kind of get your feet wet, kind of just expose you to the options that we have here because for the last 15 minutes here, we're gonna jump into my Jira instance and we're gonna create a couple of these rules, right? So I just wanted to give you some like just and some inspirations, right, of what's actually out there, so that you can see from an agile perspective what's available, from auto assigning things, from software teams, like just different things that maybe you're like me because I'm not very creative, right? And so these are just like inspirational things that you can kind of come and look at and see. Okay, well I'd love to have one of these. So, anyways, that's pretty much it here. We are going to be moving on to Jira. But if you have any questions for those still in the chat here, let me know. We're gonna try Mara's. I don't know exactly how to do it. So Mara, give me a thumbs up if you're still in the chat here. But I don't know. It should be possible, but I also don't know if I want to record myself stumbling through it. But part of part of this job is being vulnerable, right? So we're gonna go into my Jira and we're gonna just try it out. So at this point, if you're still watching, thank you again. Thank you for joining me on this journey here. And let's go look. Let's go see how, because at this point you kind of know, you know what the automation rules are by now, right? But now I'm gonna go and kind of show you different options. I'm gonna show you how to even get to the screen, right? Because there's two different ways. So I'm gonna show you those two different ways, and then I'm gonna show you all the different options, and then we're gonna create a couple of examples. So Mara, you're still here. Thank you very much. Maybe we'll just start. Well, you know what? Let me just cover these things. All right. So, two different ways to get to your automation rules. Way or method number one, go to your project, right? So you get to go to whatever Jira project you're in. You come down. You do need to have admin privilege to the Jira project. I don't think you need to have full Jira admin privilege. I don't think you do. I think as long as you have Jira admin to your project, so as long as you're a project admin, you should be able to create a rule. It's limited to just your project. You can't create like a global rule. But anyways, come over here and you should have seen this automation section here. And so if you click on that, this will kind of take you to the automation rules that you can create. Again, this will kind of walk you through some examples. There's a couple of them that it'll give it to you here on like just different things that you can try out. These are pretty much identical to the stuff we just covered. So if you can click through them again for some inspiration, it's going to show you how the rules work. But you're going to click on the create rule, and then we're going to get to town, right? So, but before we do that, let me show you the other way. This is the way I usually do it because I'm a site admin, and I'm usually creating these rules at a much more global scale, right? And so the way I get to the rules is I go to the gear on the top, and I go to system. From system, I have an automation section over here, and so I click on global automation, and rather than just seeing like that one rule for that one project, I can now see global rules and all rules, right? So I'll be able to see everything rather than just mine, right? But again, I'm a Jira admin, so my view is going to be a little bit different because I will be able to see everything across all the instances, versus if you were in the first method, you're only going to see the ones that are applicable and appropriate for just that one project. Okay, so that's that. Now let's kind of break down the create rules, right? So the very first thing, if you recall from like 45 minutes ago, is you gotta define a trigger. So something's gotta kick this off. Okay? And so you have some recommended based on some popularity, right? Other people within the Atlassian community creating these. Or you can come down and basically look at everything. So let me just kind of spot check a couple of these so you can kind of get some inspiration, right? Field value change, very, very popular. Whenever a particular field changes, I'm going to want to go do something. Okay? This is a very common one. Issue created, another very common one, right? So as soon as something is created in Jira, you're gonna want it to trigger. You're gonna want to do something. Transition. Oops, I shouldn't click on these. Oh boy. You would think that I know what I'm doing. Transition is gonna be again those transitions from status to status. Issue updated. You want to be careful with this one because you could the anything that I just described other than created, right? But when a field changes or when the issue transitions, those are edits, those are updates to the ticket, to the issue. My recommendation to you is it is more valuable for you to call out the explicit trigger than to use this issue updated, because this issue updated is going to treat any update as a trigger. And again, it's not that it's a bad thing, but it's just going to be triggering a lot. Because you can imagine how many updates are happening in Jira, right? Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of updates a day. So you want to be careful, right? You only want to use this when you literally like you're up against a wall and you're like, oh boy, how do I trigger this, right? And you're like, I'm just gonna do it whenever it's updated, right? Manual trigger is interesting. I like manual triggers because this is a fun way to test the waters, if you will, where you're not quite sure what's gonna trigger it, and you definitely or maybe you do know what's gonna trigger it, but you don't want to wait. For example, let's say that you want this rule to run when we enter a transition that is like almost all the way towards the end of a workflow. Well, I don't want to test quickly. I don't want to like transition and issue 16 different statuses to finally get to the one that's going to trigger it. So while I'm doing my testing, I'll actually change it to a manual trigger so that I can just hit the button. So you get a cool little button, and then you can run it yourself, right? So that's kind of like a little debugging, if you will, right? Some of the other ones that I've used are version, when a version is created, when a version is updated. These are for branches, right? So this section here is if you're pulling into your Jira, if you're pulling into your GitHub and your CI/CD, like you can do when your PR is created, when the PR is merged, when the branch is created, right? You can do a bunch of different cool things there. Webhooks, this is way more advanced. I don't particularly use this one at all. This is like really PhD level, so I try to stay away from these. And scheduled's cool. So scheduled is one of those things where you like, if you have a team that every couple months or every 4 weeks, they need to create a task that goes and does something, well, you can just have these things come up on a schedule, right? And then we have approval. So if you're using Jira Service Management, you know that you have an approval workflow here, so you can do those, and then release management. So anyways, those are the common ones, but I'm just going to stick to the one that I usually do, which is like a field value change. Okay? So once you pick that, you have options, because this stuff is not black and white, right? But actually, let's build out Mara's example here. I don't want to keep her waiting too long. So let's see. Mara says, I need to write something that creates a subtask after the main Jira issue has been in a certain status for X days. So my recommendation for you then, Mara, is to let's see if I have one. I would create a field called can I do this? No, you know what? Never mind. I wouldn't create a field. Well, I would do a field just because you want to know that it's in a specific status, right? Like, and to track that in Jira is very hard to do, but you could do this, right? So you can create a field that is, well, let me open up my workflows in another screen, just so I can see what workflows I have available to me. But my head, the way I would do this is if I just go to a workflow that I may have here. Let me see if okay, so these are, okay, let's just do in progress, right? So I'm gonna create a field a custom field that tracks like it's just a date picker, right? And it's issue in progress. Okay, and I'm gonna assign this one over to the project that I was just on, which was T2. Yep, T2. So we'll give it to T2, and that's it, right? And so now when I go to my project in T2, I'm gonna create an issue of make a turkey, right? And so I have a field issue in progress, right? And so what I can do here is I can then go to the workflow. Again, this is a little more sophisticated, but your rule that you're asking is kind of complex. This is one way. There's so many different ways to skin a cat, but just being on the pressure of doing a live stream here, this is the way I would do it. So I would go into my workflow and I would go into my transition to in progress. I go and add a post function. And in this post function, I would add a update custom field, and I'm gonna click add, and then I'm gonna go pick that issue in progress that I just created, right? And then I'm gonna copy this code here, which is ampersand current date time. I'm gonna just pop it right there. Okay, and so what this is going to do is whenever the issue transitions to this status, I'm gonna timestamp it. I'm gonna give it a time, because now that I know that I entered a specific status, I stamped it, right? And you can hide the field so it's not visible, but what you'll be able to see here is see how it's empty right now, but as soon as I transition this issue to in progress, we're gonna get the timestamp. So now we have like a baseline. Now we have something to measure off of, right? And so the issue has been created, and so now I can play with this. Now I have some options here, right? So if I go back to my automation rule, which holy moly, I realize I'm just jumping all over the place here, right? But now I'm gonna go and I am going to be creating my rule, and I am oh boy, no, that still doesn't make sense. See, Mara, this is why I need to give it some thought, because the way we just did this, right? The field's gonna update, but I still don't know how long it's been, right? That because your problem is you need like the delta, right? You're really looking for that delta. So this is where I was talking about, like it's kind of challenging to find the right trigger sometimes. It's probably the hardest part, because finding those right triggers, like it can be really, really challenging. So I don't know that I have a specific, like I have a way of looking them up, but just not the trigger. Like, how would I do this? Mara, you got me stopped. I don't like being stopped. You gotta stop me on a live stream. Alright, let's see. Because the problem with the way I'm going, right, is I'm going to timestamp it, but then I'm not going to do anything with it, right, because it's not going to, it won't update itself again, right, like, but I can tell now, I can create a JQL that's like, hey, is the date of this field X amount of days after, right? And so that at least I can go and pull it up. But the triggers what's catching me right now, right? Because or not confusing me, but just it's got me blocked, because I need to find a way of like, how do I determine how much time has elapsed? JQ, yeah, so that's what I was thinking, right? But there is no trigger for a JQL. So that's the first thing I was looking for, is like, is there a JQL? But there's not, right? You can do the JQL to find it, right? Like as the condition, but we still need that trigger. It's like something has to kick this in, something needs to kick off this rule, right? So like the only thing I can think of is maybe look at like maybe it's scheduled, and so it runs every single day, but that's just not gonna find the right issue either. Come on, Gary, help us out here. How do we fix Mara's problem here? Let's see. I need to write something that creates a subtask. It's okay if you don't want to abandon it. I will think about it. Okay. I don't like to give up on stuff, but I will think about it. It's in the recording here. Right. So just running maybe run it. Yeah. I'm gonna figure this one out, Mara. I will figure this out, and we'll give you a special video just for you. but I need to write something that creates a subtask after the main Jira has been in a certain status for X days. Okay, we're gonna figure this one out, Mara. Maybe just not in this video because I do only have like 5 more minutes here. um, but if you want to stick around, maybe let me just show people how to create a rule because we haven't even done that yet. So let me just create a simple rule, and then we will get this party started here. Okay, so let's just do when an issue is created, right? Um, now that we have a trigger, right? I think everybody's kind of figured out by now. You need a trigger. You need something to kick this thing off, right? But once you kick it off, you can go straight to an action. You don't have to put conditions, right? But you can go straight into an action. And so this is where we can edit the issue. We can create a page in Confluence. You can create a branch in GitHub. You can send an email. You can transition the issue. You can assign it to somebody. You can make a clone. You can add a comment. You can create a subtask. So guess what? We're going to use this one for Mara's example, right? You can delete comments. You can edit the issue. You can link the issue. You can log some time against it. You can send emails. You can send Microsoft Teams message. You can send a Slack message. You can add a customer. You can approve or decline the request. There's just so many things that you can do, right? And so I challenge you, go have some time to explore, right? Go and look at these up and try them out, see what they do. But in this particular case, I'm just going to stick to the basics. When an issue is created, I'm going to edit the issue, and I'm going to, let's see, what should we do? What would be a good example? I should have probably, you know what, let's do, I don't want to do security level. Let's change priority, right? No, I don't know what to do, folks. What's a good rule? What's an easy rule, right? Because Mara's rule is very complex. What's an easy example that I should be giving people? Maybe let's change the start date. You know what? Yeah, no. Okay, I got one. We're gonna when the issue's transitioned, right? So we're gonna check for a transition. This is a good one. So when we go into in progress, right? So I don't care where it comes from, but as long as we go into in progress, right? Then I'm going to start a new action, and I'm going to edit an issue, and I'm going to change the start date, right? Then I'm going to basically set the start date to be, and this is kind of cool. You can see like the code here, transition on assignment. Yeah, we could definitely do that. Yeah, so we'll do that one next, right? Because so we're just gonna set the start date here to be now. How do I do now? Can I just do now? I want to do. What was that example that I had? I should really just now, right? Now. Let's see if that works, right? And so this is going to be set start date, right? And so let's go test it out, right? So now we can go into our project, and we're going to transition something to. So we got to make sure we got start date enabled. So this one doesn't have it, so I'm going to go bring in my start date so I can see the start date. Wow, this is a lot more stressful than I thought it was going to be. Holy moly, don't do live Jira. I'm learning my lesson. Don't do but it kind of validates, right? It separates those that know what they're doing to those that don't know what they're doing. But clearly I don't know what I'm doing. So anyways, we got the start date brought in, so the start date is empty, and so the rule is going to basically say, let me make this big so you can see it. When I transition, and I was already in progress, so let me go to do, right? But when I go from any status to in progress, I'm going to update the start date to now, which should, see, there it is. It automatically populated to now. You guys saw how easy that was? And now the last thing to do is go check your audit log. Remember I talked earlier? Go check your audit log, because your audit log is going to tell you what's happening. And if it fails, it's going to tell you how or why it failed, right? And so again, these are kind of cool to just kind of go and see what's going on. Because usually it'll tell you, well, the actor's bad or the condition didn't meet. And you're like, what do you mean the condition didn't meet, right? And so now you can go troubleshoot that. So anyways, let's make Gary's rule here. So we're going to do transition on assignment. So we're going to do a field value change, and we're looking for assignee, right? So if and then you can do the type, right? If the value is added or deleted or pretty much any change, right? And you can check and see is it upon creation, is it upon editing, whatever it is, right? We're just gonna leave all the operations. So whenever the assignee is assigned, then we're gonna do let's do a condition, right? Let's stick a condition in here. So we're gonna check and see if the issue type, or let's do, you know what, if the status, yeah, let's just leave status. If the status does not equal in progress, right? So we want to basically say, hey, like, look, the value, the issue just got assigned, but we don't want to do this rule if it's already in progress, because the action, the action that we're going to do here is, I want to transition the oops, not that one. See, this is, I want to transition the issue to in progress, right? And so I can just say that. So what this is saying is like, hey, whenever an assignee is set, move it to in progress, except as long as the status is already not in progress. Because if it's already in progress, then there's no point in setting it, right? And so we can just call this one like auto transition to in progress when assigned. Remember I was telling you guys that, and if you see when I hit turn on, you don't know about the rule details until you got to go back and update these things, right? And so this is where you would want to update the actor, the project that it runs in, and stuff like that. But you don't know these things until after you created it. So anyways, once you've hit create, you can go back to your list. We're going to go back into Jira, and we're going to take this issue here, and we're just going to assign it to me. I'm going to assign it to me, and then fingers crossed, this status is going to update. Sometimes, there it is, see? Sometimes you got to like refresh. It's not always instantaneous, so don't freak out. If your rule doesn't work, it always helps for you to go back into the rule itself here and check that auto log, because if you see a success here, it probably just means you got to refresh it, and then you'll see the data. But I do so many of these that sometimes like anyways, it just doesn't always do it. So Gary, you're doing awesome. Appreciate that you put yourself out there. Making mistakes is part of working in Jira, and I definitely, that is how I feel even with that. Yeah. I like to take the rules offline every once in a while just so I can think about it. James says, great use case. My team struggles remembering to use statuses to communicate to others. Yeah, so this is, again, a great way so that you can get these transitionings happening, so that you can get your teams to kind of, like, again, because sometimes, like, Jira gets in the way, right? A lot of, especially, like, within the developer world, like, it just becomes a mundane task where, like, oh, great, I got to go update Jira. But if you can make it easy, right? If you can kind of take that part out and do the transitions and put some automation rules, like, it goes a long way, right? So I challenge you, since we're kind of here at the top of the hour here, I challenge you to go and look and see, hey, what can we automate, right? And then come back, let's talk, let's chat. Mara, I guarantee you we're going to be figuring out your problem. We're going to fix that rule. But yeah, come back, let's chat, and I'd love to do another session maybe in a week or two where we revisit some of the automation rules that you all made, and maybe make some more. I do plan, though, at some point, I don't know if it'll happen this year, but I do plan on doing like a more in-depth, like 8-hour course type of thing. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff too, let me know. You can literally, I always joke around people, but you can get a PhD in automation rules. So there is no shortage of like use cases here. So there's just so many different options, so many configurations, and Atlassian updates them like very frequently. Even within the last year, they just added way more options, and they're constantly pushing things, and so it's a really, really cool thing. So if you're not using automation rules, I think I kicked this live stream with this, right? If you're not using them, I highly recommend you use them, right? This was just like a very basic beginner's guide for folks, but the sky's the limit. There's a lot in the Atlassian community. You can actually go in and kind of look and try to Google what you're trying to do, and then some other people will like share their code, and they'll kind of show the logic and stuff. But there's pretty much, I mean, I've probably have created 200 to 300 different automation rules in the last year. Obviously, they're all like proprietary and like confidential agreements and stuff, so I can't share them all with you. But there's a lot of cool rules, and so what I'll do is I'll kind of go and look and see if there's anything cool that I've created that I can share with you. Oftentimes though, you can see that I'm like flying by the seat of my pants here, so I don't always I never script anything, right? So that's probably part of the, maybe hopefully it's entertaining, right? Me struggling and kind of not knowing what the heck I'm doing sometimes. But I promise you, I do know what I'm doing. It's just in the heat of the moment, man, things get tough. Anyways, Gary, Mara, James, I appreciate you all commenting and interacting. I think these live streams, this is why I love doing the live streams, because it just becomes way more interactive when I have people to talk through, right, and solve people's problems. Although Mara, I definitely feel like I owe you one. So anyways, thank you so much, everybody. I appreciate you. Just to share with you guys here, because I feel like this community, right, is where we're at. And so just to kind of share the wins, the losses and stuff, where we're at. We are trying to monetize the channel, so we're $11.94, so we definitely crushed that. But if you haven't subscribed, make sure you subscribe here. And if you can share these videos with like your coworkers or other people that you know that use Jira, that would be much appreciated as well. From the monetization standpoint, we are so close. We're a little over 800 hours here of watch time. So whenever you guys can just watch the whole length of videos, you have no idea how much it actually helps. And so the more people that just kind of watch these, the better. The playlist, I have a couple playlists, but the Jira trainings playlist, it has 10 videos in it. These are usually all like an hour long. And so if you just kind of watch these through, these are like an hour long. So yeah, help me. I got a goal. I'd love to monetize by Labor Day, and that's like in a week and a half. So very, very aggressive goal that I have here, but oh man, it'd be so cool if I get that little check mark here by Labor Day. But for sure it's gonna happen sometime in September. But I just thought I'd share with you all so you can kind of see where my mission's at, where my head's at, and like the daily commitments of like trying to get this channel monetized by Labor Day. But anyways, thank you, Mara, James, Gary, and everybody else that attended. I can't call out your name if you didn't comment. So next time we'll be here every single Tuesday. I'm gonna be doing Tuesdays for the foreseeable future until at least the end of the year. We are going to be scaling back though. The summer of Jira is coming to an end. Labor Day was kind of like that pivotal moment. And so we're going to be transitioning from 5 videos a week, which is what I'm doing right now, to 1 live stream and 2 videos. 1 Jira and then 1 Confluence. So I'm going to start folding in Confluence. And so if you're interested in that, we got some videos from Confluence coming through. And then, yeah, so there's no shortage of videos though. I probably got another 200 in the back burner here. And then, yeah, so thank you again from the bottom of my heart. Appreciate you all tuning in, taking the time to be here. It means a lot. It makes this a lot more fun. Last week, I didn't have as much interaction, and you can always, like, I hope you can feel the energy and hopefully you have some fun. I'll let you go because I'm rambling at this point, but appreciate you all, and see you all next week. If you have any topic ideas, let me know. Feel free to get a hold of me. I'm on LinkedIn. If you guys want to look me up, on LinkedIn here, you should be able to find me fairly easily, but it's just LinkedIn Alex Ortiz 89. Just feel free to connect with me here and send me a message, and we'll get some content created for you. So the content will be great on your channel. Looking to learn more about integration with Insight. Okay, Insight is interesting. So well, I definitely have experience with Insight. So James, if you have any specific questions, find me on LinkedIn. Let's chat, because I've done a couple things with Insight. I've done a couple of long-term client projects with them, but it's a doozy, right? And so I can definitely offer some guidance or some help out with you there. So if you want to reach out on LinkedIn, feel free to reach out. All right. For everybody else, thank you very much. Appreciate you, and I will see you all next week. Thank you so much for tuning in. Bye.
I feel nauseous, believe me. Never had a lot of shit come easy. Had to work hard, struggle just to be me. Had to rise up just so they could see me. Did what I had to do just to feed me, and what was left over I put towards my dreaming. But the only thing in life that has meaning are the things you gotta work for, believe me. Take into your hands a plan, your own hands can land your own brand. And damn, I feel like no one takes accountability. They want the credibility, convincingly unwilling to put in the hours it takes to get some power. Don't be f***ing sour, take a cold shower. Scream until you're louder, work until you're prouder. And f*** all the doubters, they're just your downers. I swear to God they all let me down. I always fought just to wear the crown. I'm off at these fucking clowns who were all taught they deserve an ounce. It's only worth it if you work for it. It's only worth it if you work for it. I won't stop till they hear me now. I won't stop till I wear the crown. just telling you to fight for your dreams, but it's not what it seems. Man, it's hard to be seen when everybody wants to be king. Yeah, they all wanna ring, yeah, we all wanna be free. So show me what you got, what you bring, how you fight in the ring, how you take a